Alright, time to review Cave Story. But I don't want to do it alone. Hello?
Hey John, heard you were reviewing Cave Story.
Who is this?
It's Ricky.
Is this Jacob?
Are you serious? Are you seriously doing this?
Because, I mean...
John, this is literally a rip-off of the beginning of your Hyrule Warriors video.
Yeah, well, nobody watched that video.
Nobody's gonna watch this video.
Fair point.
Look, do you just want to get on with things?
Yes, please.
Right then, no more dicking around.
You got it. Cave Story. What can be said about Cave Story?
Well, it's just plain amazing, and that's just putting things lightly. This game has so many great elements, including the classic soundtrack, addicting as hell gameplay, brilliant storytelling, and the fact that it's basically one of the grandfathers of side-scrolling indie games. I love it to death, and I think it's fair to say that quite a bit of other people do as well.
And since we've already sort of addressed it, let's begin with the story of the game. Are you ready? Alright. The story begins really before the actual game begins. How delightfully confusing. Anyway, Sue Sakamoto is the daughter of a scientist who gathers a team to travel via helicopter to a flying island where they're hoping to do research on a race of sentient bunny people, the Mamiga. However, one team member, the Doctor, has a different plan altogether. After he discovers the location of what is known as the Demon Crown, he receives ultimate power and control over two minions called Misery and Balrog.
But John, you're forgetting something quite important about the Doctor.
No, I don't think so. Are you sure?
Oh, very sure.
Oh, what is it then?
The fact that the Doctor is one of the biggest pricks alive. In video games, not in real life.
Oh, here we go.
If you're familiar with my videos, and by that I mean my older videos, then I'm sure you know that I seriously am not a fan of the Doctor. I mean, my god, he came with a research team to the island under the guise that he was going to help them. Then as soon as he got what he wanted, this position of power, he just got rid of them. And that's only the cherry on the shit cake, because apparently having power over two minions and magic isn't enough. No, he wants more. He decides that with this newfound power that he's going to enslave an entire species called the Mimigas, and he's going to do this with the help of these red flower petals, which makes the Mimigas angry and rabid.
Cave Story, the game of MacGuffins.
Don't interrupt my tangent, John. Over the course of the game, he kills and makes you kill Mimiga, many of which were your closest friends from the near beginning of the game. And you know what the best part is? Or the worst part? Even when you do finally kill him, it doesn't end, because his soul infests the core from earlier in the game, and Misery, and Sue, one of which is in charge of the whole bloody island. The Doctor's just one hell of a prick, like through and through. I hate him. I really don't like him. I hate him to death.
You alright, man?
Yep. Feeling better. Got that out of my system. We can carry on now.
Alright then. The actual game begins with, quote, a little robot boy booting up in a cave. He plunders a gun known as the Polar Star from a hermit who's sleeping and sets out on his adventures. So basically, the aim of the game is to stop the Doctor, save the Mamiga, and escape the island.
But there is so much more to it than that, which is what's so brilliant. And what's even better is that the game never really directly reveals the plot to you. Instead, it's fed in small little chunks from characters when you do something for them, and the best example has got to be with Jenga. Not the game with the tower and the falling block. Jenga, the old woman. Jenga is a small little witch who you encounter while trying to chase down the Doctor. Later on in the game, you find out that she's the mother of Misery, which is a fun little tidbit for you.
Jenga asks you to go out and find her missing dogs, and each time you do, she says a little more about the story. And might I just say, it's tragic as hell.
But that's enough of the story for now. We'll return to it later. For now, let's discuss one of the game's biggest draws, the gameplay.
Cave Story is a throwback to the 8-bit shooting platformers of old, like Mega Man and Contra. But what's actually pretty interesting is that I honestly believe that Cave Story does it way better than what it's inspired by. Main case in point, the experience system.
In most platformers, hell, most games in general, when you get hit, you lose some health and that's it. You get a small little boo-boo, but you're a stronger man for it, and you're gonna be better from this experience. But in Cave Story, it's an entirely different story. Anyways, when you kill enemies, oftentimes they'll spit out these little yellow nachos, and these can be used to power up your weapons. There are 3 levels of weapon, and in each one, your gun even has a different sprite for what it shoots out. A nice touch.
And it's just little things like that that make this game stand out from the others that are just like it. Little details are peppered throughout this game that make it truly great.
And now, if you don't mind, we're just gonna gush about some of our favorite things about Cave Story. If you don't like that, too bad, man. Too bad.
I guess I'll go first.
No, John, don't just guess. Guessing is for suckers and idiots and liars and gamblers and politicians. Talk about your favorite parts and be proud. Proud in your decision and everything you do in your entire life. Scream from the rooftops how glad you are to be alive. Do it!
What the hell is wrong with you?
I might be a little high.
Anyway, one of my favorite things is definitely the opening. I mentioned it briefly above, but I absolutely adore the way it's presented. The first time anyone's playing any type of game, the general norm is that a cutscene will explain the story to you, or maybe your character will be seen talking to someone else. I don't know, something to introduce you to the world around you. But here, it's Kazuma. You find out that he's trying to contact someone named Sue, and he's having no luck getting a response. Then boom, you start playing. You're a little red and white robot just walking around. You steal a hermit's gun while he sleeps, and all the while, Kazuma keeps popping back up. It's a really simple thing, and you soon start getting introduced to all of the wonderful characters, but I think it's wonderful how this game just drops you in and expects you to learn about the world around you. Oh, you're in a small room, go out the door. Once you're out the door, you have to go left, which is unusual for other side-scrollers. It's small little things that I'm honestly probably looking too deep into.
And for me, it comes in 3 distinct moments. 3 moments that make this game unforgettable for me. The first is reviving Curly. Now the thing is, you can let Curly die in this game if you're really not careful enough, and probably are if you're playing through it for the first time. But you don't want to do that. If you do rescue her and you don't let her drown, there's a few things you need to do to get her back to normal. First, you jump up this totally random ledge to get to this door, rest in the bed, and then look at the computer in the room to see that there are notes you need to read. You read the notes, and then you get all the water out of Curly, then you make sure that after she wakes up, you don't leave her there. If you think you're done, you wish. Now, after you fight the giant whale fish, you don't have to worry about her until you get to the plantation, which is just before you head up and kill the doctor. Now you find Curly standing with this random creep, and you find about the ma pignon. You go and find this ma pignon, you find about the mushroom's ridiculous little quiz, you kill the mushroom, you give it to Curly, and then and only then is she finally better. It's convoluted for sure, and it takes way more time than it ever needed to, but I love it just the same. The whole effort that you take just to revive Curly is actually quite heartwarming. There's also one of the final bosses, the Undead Core, which is probably one of my favorite bosses in general. You originally fought the core at the end of the labyrinth where Curly could have died, and then after you destroy it, the island starts to fall and Misery warps it away, never to be seen again. Or at least, not until after you kill the doctor. Then you go up some stairs and find the core repaired, but frozen. That's when it's revealed that Misery, the doctor's assistant, isn't actually all that bad, and even offers to help you off the island. But then, nah, psych bro. The doctor comes and possesses both Misery and Sue, and the core, and this core becomes the Undead Core.
This fight is awesome. It's genuinely one of my favorite fights in the entire game. The only time you can attack it is when it lifts up its shell. When it does that, it also shoots out at you, dealing major damage. While that's happening, Sue and Misery, under the control of the Doctor, are also around, just fighting you and causing general mayhem. The Undead Core can also summon different enemies that you've seen over the course of the game. It's just generally so great. And then, after you beat it, the best moment in the entire game comes.
Or in other words, it's when the shit hits the fan.
Truer words were never spoken. Well, you know, besides like equals MC cubed, because I don't know about you guys, but Stephen deGrasse Tyson seems like a pretty smart guy, so I'm just not sure.
Now normally after the Undead Core fight, that's it. You go with Sue straight to the helicopter and escape as the island falls behind you. However, if you did a bunch of ridiculous shit, including saving Curly, getting the Booster 2.0 by not going after Professor Booster after you see him fall in the labyrinth, and getting the Iron Bond from Curly after you restore her memory, then you get to go to the hardest part of the game, and without a doubt, probably the most fun. You go into this little shed, which is a little bit dodgy, but go with it. And then you fall down this hole, and blam! Welcome to the Bloodstained Sanctuary.
Or as it was called in the original patch, Hell, which I think is just much more cheery.
Oh, naturally. I don't think anyone can argue against that.
The Sanctuary is so hectic, it's ridiculous. There are multiple phases before you get to face the final boss, Balos, so let's go through them one by one. First up, you're dropped straight into an area where booster timing is essential to make sure you don't fall on these insta-death spikes. Get Curly right before you head the door, which is where my absolute favorite part is. I mean, come on guys, who wouldn't like this?
Now personally, I don't mind it. I mean, sure, it is a little frustrating, considering how much damage you can take from the falling blocks, and how the little demon cherubs are everywhere, just getting at you. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. Head through this actually short room, and fall down a hole. It's essential to lose as little health as possible in this segment, because you're going to need it for what's next.
This is the longest room in the entire segment. However, there's also many hearts to be found just laying around, and if you're lucky, some enemies will even drop hearts for you to pick up. This is the most intense part with the platforming as well. There are multiple points where if you're not specific with your timing, it's death. And that means going all the way back to the beginning. Oh, and by the way, can I just mention the fucking incredible music? Hit it.
There's also a boss at the end! Joy! It's not that hard, but because of the fact that you have to do this on one life, and you still have a 3-phased boss coming up, it's a little ridiculous. Anyways, you kill it, you make sure not to get crushed when you kill it, and then you head up to Balos. Make sure to listen to what his dog has to say. It's not the most important of dialogue, but it's a cute doggo.
Once again, I have to mention that all throughout the Sanctuary, you are getting more and more info on Balos than even Jenka gave to you. It's a really good way to inform the player the magnitude of what they're getting into. It also makes it all the more satisfying when you finally beat Balos. Once you head in, you also get a little more story, but this time from Balos himself. You learn that his story is actually a really sad one, and he regrets everything that he's done. And believe it or not, he's so horrified with his actions that he wants you to kill him. He even says that he hopes you're victorious.
Then the battle begins, and my god, can I just say that this is one of the best designed things ever, of all time, ever. I love it so much. There are so many phases to this as well. The first phase begins with him dashing and flying around the arena, slamming into the ground, which causes energy to come out and try to hit you. It's probably the easiest, but the first time you play it, it's very intimidating to have a giant tree-looking guy flying all over the place.
The second phase has him turning into a giant version of his face and slamming on the ground a bunch. This is actually a pretty easy part of the fight as well, as long as you don't get hit.
But the third phase is when things get crazy.
Almost insane.
It's super difficult, even on repeat playthroughs. There are spikes on the ground, cherubs in the air, and Balos the entire time is just shooting at you non-stop. It's crazy intense, and almost guaranteed that on the first time you get to him, you won't beat him. It's so fun, and the music matches it perfectly, slowly swelling up to this super awesome track that is made to pump you up. And then there's the moment where you finally beat him. The feeling is indescribable.
It's like getting everything you wanted for Christmas every single year. It's like having cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's simply wonderful.
Then Balrog comes and gets you, and you fly off to go live with him at some better place, like Canada. This ending, through all of the crap you have to do to get to it, this ending just makes it all totally worth it. Just knowing that after fighting for so long, Curly and Quota are going to live happily. It almost puts a tear to my eye.
In fact, that's the one thing I can say to the entire game's credit. It's extremely satisfying. Everything you do from the beginning to the end leaves you immensely satisfied.
This game set out to be like Mega Man and platformers from the 80s, and it succeeded. Not just in being a homage to those games, but also in being very fun. It managed to top many of those games even. It's formed its own fan base, it's still going strong today, gained the interest of many companies including Nintendo, and was one of the first independently made games of all time, which is simply crazy. I love this game. I love almost everything about it.
No arguments there. This game is without even a bit of competition my favorite 2D platformer. And it's a good contender for one of my favorite games of all time as well. I'm going to love this game till the day I die, and that's a guarantee.
I am MasterJakeStudios.
And I'm Blackish Butler. And hey Ricky, this was fun. Maybe we can do this again sometime. He's already gone. Well, thank you so much for watching everybody. I'll see you in another 6 months. This is Blackish Butler, signing off. I'll see you next time.